I still remember the exact moment I got the call. July 26, 2002. A date burned into my memory, like a scar that never fully healed. It was a typical summer day, and I was busy with the mundane tasks of life, washing dishes, folding laundry, checking on my kids as they played in the backyard. Then the phone rang, and with it, everything changed. My sister Lilian had been in a car accident, a bad one. By the time we got to the hospital, it was already too late. She was 39 years old, too young to die. But death doesn't care about age, does it? One moment, she was alive, vibrant, stubborn as always, and the next she was gone. Just like that. The days that followed were a blur of grief, confusion, and that hollow, aching numbness that comes when you lose someone you love. I remember standing at her funeral, holding my children's hands and staring at her casket, unable to believe that my sister was in there, that she wasn't going to burst through the doors, laughing at how we all fell for some elaborate prank. But she didn't. After Lilian's death, life became heavier. It wasn't just the grief, it was the emptiness she left behind. Lilian was the glue that held our family together in so many ways. She was the one who called everyone on their birthday, who organized family dinners, who made sure we didn't drift apart. Without her, there was this void. Her kids were the ones who suffered the most. Suddenly, they were motherless, lost in their own grief, while we all tried to figure out how to pick up the pieces. And me, I tried to be strong for them, for my parents, for my own kids. But inside, I was falling apart. By December, 4 months after the accident, I was barely holding on. The weight of it all, the sadness, the guilt, the anger, was suffocating. I spent most nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the accident in my mind, wondering if there was something I could have done to prevent it. Maybe if I had called her that day, convinced her to stay home, maybe she wouldn't have been on that road at that exact moment. Maybe she'd still be here. That Sunday afternoon, I felt like I was on the verge of breaking. My older child, who was 6 at the time, was at a friend's house, and my youngest, just 2 years old, was taking a nap. The house was quiet, too quiet. I had spent the morning cleaning, hoping that the mindless routine would distract me. But it didn't help. I finally gave up and lay down on my bed, hoping to rest for a bit. It was one of those blazing hot summer afternoons when the sun is so bright it feels like it's burning through the windows. The light streamed in through the partially open window, and a warm breeze rustled the curtains. The TV was on, playing some forgettable daytime show in the background. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the sound of someone singing. At first, I thought it was coming from the TV. It was soft, almost melodic, like a lullaby. But as I blinked and sat up slightly, I realized it wasn't coming from the TV at all. It was coming from the foot of my bed. And that's when I saw her, Lilian. She was just standing there, as real as you or me. She looked exactly like she did the last time I saw her, wearing her favorite red turtleneck and those black jeans she loved. Her hair was loose, framing her face in soft waves, and it shimmered in the sunlight streaming through the window. I remember staring at her, my heart racing, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. She looked so real, so solid. I could even see the stitching on the pocket of her jeans, The little details that you wouldn't notice in a dream or a hallucination. But she couldn't be there. She was dead. "Lilian," I whispered, my voice trembling. She smiled at me. That same warm, slightly mischievous smile she always had. And then, in the softest, calmest voice, she said, "I'm here. I'm here." A chill ran down my spine, and I felt my eyes fill with tears. I wanted to reach out to her, to touch her, to pull her into my arms and never let go. But I couldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, watching her as she slowly walked toward me. It was like time had stopped. Everything else faded away. The TV, the sunlight, the sound of the breeze outside. All I could see was her. And in that moment, I forgot about everything. I forgot that she was supposed to be dead. I forgot about the funeral, the grief, the endless nights of crying myself to sleep. None of it mattered because she was here, right in front of me. I thought you were gone," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. She tilted her head slightly, still smiling, and said, "I'm not gone. I'm still here." And for a brief, fleeting moment, I believed her. I sat there, staring at her, my mind struggling to keep up with what was happening. Everything about her looked so real. The way her hair caught the sunlight, the faint shimmer of the fabric on her red turtleneck, even the small scar above her left eyebrow that she got when we were kids, riding bikes in the cul-de-sac. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like she had never left. But she had. And that's when reality came crashing back in. Lilian was dead. I had stood at her funeral, watched them lower her casket into the ground. I had cried so hard I thought my body would break from the grief. She wasn't supposed to be standing in my bedroom, smiling at me like everything was normal. "But you're dead," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. She tilted her head slightly, her smile faltering for a moment, as if she was surprised that I would say something like that. "No, I'm not," she said softly, shaking her head. "I'm here. I've always been here." Something about the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. Her voice was so calm, so soothing, but there was something off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like Lilian. I tried to sit up, to reach for her, but my body felt heavy, like I was moving through water. My hand trembled as I reached out, and for a brief moment, I thought I could feel the warmth of her skin beneath my fingertips. But just as I was about to touch her, she stepped back, and something changed. It happened so quickly that I almost missed it. 1 second, she was standing there, smiling at me. And the next, her expression shifted. Her eyes darkened, and her smile faded into something cold, something hollow. It was as if all the warmth had drained out of her in an instant. "You don't believe me, do you?" she said, her voice still soft, but now there was an edge to it, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. I don't know what to believe," I admitted, my voice shaking. She took a step closer, her eyes locked on mine. There was something hypnotic about the way she moved, like she was gliding instead of walking. "I'm here because you needed me," she said. "You've been calling out to me, haven't you? Every night, when you're lying awake, thinking about me. I heard you. I've been here, watching over you, waiting for you to see me." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Was this real? Was I hallucinating? I had heard of people seeing their loved ones after they died, but this felt different. It felt darker. "I miss you so much," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I think about you every day. It's been so hard without you, Lilian. I don't know how to keep going." Her expression softened again, and for a moment, she looked like my sister, the real Lilian, the one who used to braid my hair when we were kids, who always had my back no matter what. "You don't have to be alone," she said. "I'm here. I'll always be here." I wanted to believe her. I wanted it so badly. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. There was a heaviness in the air, an oppressive feeling that seemed to press down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. "Why now?" I asked. "Why did you wait so long to come to me?" Her eyes flickered for a moment, and I saw something in them that made my blood run cold. It was gone in an instant, but it was enough to make me pull back, my heart racing. "You weren't ready before," she said, her voice low and soothing. "But you're ready now." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that seemed to be settling over my mind. Everything about this felt wrong, but I couldn't think straight. It was like her presence was clouding my thoughts, pulling me deeper into some kind of trance. "I don't understand," I said. "What do you mean I'm ready now?" She leaned in closer, and I could feel her breath on my face. It smelled like flowers, like the perfume she used to wear. But beneath that, there was something else. Something rancid, like rotting leaves. "You'll see," she whispered. "You just have to trust me." And then, before I could say anything else, she leaned down and kissed my forehead. Her lips were ice cold, and the moment they touched my skin, a jolt of electricity shot through my body. I gasped, my vision blurring as a wave of dizziness washed over me. When I opened my eyes, she was gone. I sat up, gasping for air, my heart pounding like a drum. The room was exactly as it had been before, sunlight streaming through the window, the TV still playing in the background. But everything felt different. The air was thick, heavy, and there was a lingering scent in the room. Her perfume mixed with that rotten, decaying smell. I looked around, half expecting her to still be there, but I was alone. Had I imagined the whole thing? Was I finally losing my mind? I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my hands trembling as I reached for the glass of water on my nightstand. I took a sip, trying to calm myself down, but my hands were shaking so badly that I spilled half of it down my front. And that's when I noticed it. On the foot of the bed, right where Lilian had been standing, was a single, dark red lipstick stain, just like the kind she used to wear. I sat there, staring at the lipstick stain on the bedspread, my mind racing. It wasn't just a trick of the light. It was real, tangible, and it meant that whatever had just happened wasn't some fever dream or hallucination. Lilian had been here, or something that looked like her. I stood up, my legs shaking beneath me, and took a deep breath. The air still smelled faintly of her perfume, mingled with that sour, earthy odor that made my stomach turn. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, that I was just overtired or stressed. But deep down, I knew better. There was something in the house, and it wasn't just in my imagination. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions like a robot. I picked up my son from his friend's house, played with my daughter, made dinner, and tried to act normal. But all the while, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I walked past a window or glanced at a dark corner, I felt it, that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like unseen eyes were following my every move. By the time I put the kids to bed that night, I was exhausted, but I knew there was no way I was going to sleep. Not after what had happened. I sat down on the couch with a glass of wine, hoping it would calm my nerves. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I kept telling myself that everything was fine, that I was just being paranoid. But then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a shadow moving across the hallway. It was quick, just a flicker, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. I set down my glass and got up, my hands clenched into fists. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. I walked slowly toward the hallway, every nerve in my body on high alert. The house was dark, and the only light came from the small night light I had plugged in near the kids' rooms. I moved cautiously, my bare feet making almost no sound on the hardwood floor. When I reached the hallway, I stopped and listened. Nothing. I let out a shaky breath and leaned against the wall, trying to calm myself down. I was just jumpy, that was all. There was nothing there. But as I turned to go back to the living room, I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. It was coming from my bedroom. My heart started racing again, and I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I wanted to turn around, to run out of the house and never look back. But something compelled me to move forward, to find out what or who was in there. I stepped into the bedroom, my eyes darting around the room. Everything looked normal. The bed was neatly made, the curtains were drawn, and the TV remote was sitting on the nightstand where I had left it. But the air felt heavy, like it was charged with electricity. And then I saw her. Lilian was standing by the window, her back to me. She was wearing the same red turtleneck and black jeans, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. For a moment, I thought she was looking outside, but then I realized she wasn't looking at anything. She was just standing there, perfectly still, as if she were waiting for something. "Lilian," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. She didn't move. I took a step closer, my hands trembling. "Lilian, what are you doing here? What do you want?" Slowly, she turned around. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, and her eyes were dark and hollow, like two empty sockets. But it wasn't her face that terrified me the most. It was her smile. It was wide and unnatural, stretching too far across her face, like someone had carved it into her skin. "I told you," she said, her voice distorted and echoing, like it was coming from deep inside her chest. "I'm here because you needed me." I stumbled back, my heart racing, and tripped over the edge of the bed. I hit the floor hard, but I barely felt it. I was too focused on Lilian, or whatever it was that had taken her form. "You're not my sister," I said, my voice shaking. Her smile widened even more, and she took a step toward me. "But I am," she said. "I'm everything you wanted me to be. I'm here because you called me. You brought me back." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. I didn't bring you back." She crouched down in front of me, her face inches from mine. I could smell that sickly sweet perfume mixed with the stench of decay, and it made me want to gag. "You did," she said, her voice soft and seductive. "You've been thinking about me every day, every night. You've been calling out to me, wishing I was here, and now I am." Tears streamed down my face as I tried to crawl away, but she grabbed my arm, her grip like ice. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "I'm here to help you. I can make everything better. You just have to let me in." I closed my eyes, trying to block her out, but her voice was inside my head, echoing over and over again. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. I opened my eyes and found myself alone in the bedroom. My heart was still racing, and my whole body was shaking. I scrambled to my feet and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch, staring at the hallway, waiting for her to come back. But she didn't. At least, not that night. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Whatever I had seen, whatever I had summoned, it wasn't done with me yet, and I wasn't sure if I would survive what was coming next. After that night, things in the house started to change. It was subtle at first, small, almost imperceptible things that I could have easily dismissed if I wasn't already on edge. Objects weren't where I'd left them. Lights flickered for no apparent reason. The air felt colder, heavier, like the walls themselves were pressing inward. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something had entered my home that day. Something dark and malevolent. And it wasn't going to leave without a fight. The next few days passed in a blur. I tried to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, but it was hard to pretend everything was fine when every shadow, every creak of the floorboards, sent a jolt of fear through me. I barely ate, barely slept. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, constantly on edge, waiting for the next sign that Lilian, or whatever was pretending to be her, had returned. And then one night she did. It was around midnight, and the house was quiet. The kids were asleep, and I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to close my eyes. I had left the lamp on, hoping the light would keep the shadows at bay. But it didn't help. The darkness felt alive, like it was creeping in around the edges, waiting for the right moment to swallow me whole. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. The voices were soft and distant, like they were coming from far away. But as I slowly came to, I realized they were real, and they were coming from the hallway. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, like a chorus of voices all speaking at once. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but there was something about the tone that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just noise, it was a warning. I got out of bed and crept toward the door, moving as quietly as I could. My hands were trembling, and my breath came in short, shallow gasps. Every instinct was telling me to turn around, to lock the door and hide under the covers. But I had to know. I had to see what was out there. I opened the door just a crack and peered into the hallway. And that's when I saw her. Lilian was standing at the end of the hallway, her back to me, just like before. But this time, she wasn't alone. There were others with her, figures shrouded in darkness, their faces hidden in the shadows. They were tall and thin, with long, bony fingers that twitched and curled like they were itching to grab something or someone. The whispering grew louder, and I realized it was coming from them. They were the ones speaking, their voices blending together in a haunting, discordant melody. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there frozen in fear. But my body wouldn't move. It was like I was rooted to the spot, held in place by some invisible force. Lilian turned around slowly, her hollow eyes locking onto mine. Her smile was gone, replaced by a look of sadness, or maybe regret. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, her voice soft and mournful. "I didn't," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I didn't mean to." The shadowy figures moved closer, their long fingers reaching out toward me. I could feel the cold radiating off them, seeping into my skin, into my bones. "You called us," they said, their voices echoing in my mind. "You wanted her back, and now we're here." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to say goodbye." Lilian stepped forward, her expression softening. For a moment, she looked like my sister again, the way she had before the accident, before everything went wrong. "It's too late," she said. "You opened the door, and now you can't close it." The figures were inches away from me now, their cold breath brushing against my skin. I could feel their fingers on my arms, pulling me toward them, dragging me into the darkness. "Please," I begged, struggling against their grip. "I don't want this. I don't want any of this." Lilian reached out and touched my face, her hand as cold as ice. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but it's time to let go." And then everything went black. I woke up on the floor of my bedroom, gasping for air. My heart was racing, and my whole body was covered in sweat. I looked around, expecting to see Lilian and the shadowy figures, but they were gone. Had it all been a dream? A nightmare? I wasn't sure. But one thing was certain, something had changed. The house felt different, like the very walls had absorbed the darkness and were now holding it inside. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The door had been opened, and whatever I had let in wasn't going to leave without a fight. After that night, everything spiraled out of control. The house, once a sanctuary for my children and me, had become a prison, a living, breathing entity filled with darkness. There were no more whispers in the hallway, no more fleeting glimpses of Lilian at the foot of my bed. What replaced them was worse, an oppressive silence that weighed heavily on my chest, suffocating me with each passing day. I didn't know how to explain it, but I could feel the house watching me. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights felt intentional, like it was taunting me, reminding me that I had made a terrible mistake. The kids were starting to notice, too. My son, usually full of energy and curiosity, had grown quiet and withdrawn. My daughter clung to me constantly, her wide, fearful eyes darting around the room as if she expected something to jump out at her at any moment. I knew I had to do something before it was too late. But what? How do you fight something you can't see? Something that exists in the shadows? I spent hours researching, poring over every book, every article I could find about hauntings, possessions, and paranormal encounters. I reached out to anyone who might be able to help. Paranormal investigators, priests, even a medium. Most of them didn't take me seriously. The ones who did warned me that what I had unleashed was dangerous, and that if I wasn't careful, it could consume me and my family. One night, as I sat in the living room, sifting through pages of notes and old photographs, I came across something that made my blood run cold. It was a journal entry, written in shaky, uneven handwriting. It wasn't mine. You brought us here. You opened the door. Now it's time to pay the price. I stared at the words, my hands trembling. How had this journal ended up here? I hadn't written in it for years, and yet here it was, open to a page that I had never seen before. And that's when I heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from upstairs. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't a human sound. It was something primal, something that didn't belong in this world. I grabbed a flashlight and slowly made my way up the stairs, each step creaking loudly beneath my feet. The hallway was dark, but I could feel the presence waiting for me, just beyond the shadows. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw my bedroom door standing wide open. I knew I shouldn't go in. Every instinct was screaming at me to turn around, to grab my kids and run. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until I faced whatever was waiting for me on the other side. I stepped into the room, my flashlight casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and I could feel the temperature drop with each step I took. And then I saw her. Lilian was standing in the corner of the room, her back to me, just like before. But this time, something was different. Her body was twisted at an unnatural angle, her head cocked to the side as if it had been snapped. Her hair hung in matted clumps, and her skin was pale and mottled, like she had been submerged in water for too long. "Lilian," I whispered, my voice shaking. She didn't move. I took a step closer, my hands trembling. "Lilian, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring you here. I just wanted to say goodbye." Slowly, she turned to face me. Her eyes were empty sockets, dark and hollow, and her mouth stretched into a grotesque smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can't undo it," she said, her voice a low, rasping whisper. "You called me back, and now we're both trapped." "No," I said, shaking my head. "There has to be a way. There has to be." Before I could finish, the door slammed shut behind me, and the room plunged into darkness. I felt something cold wrap around my wrists, pulling me toward the center of the room. I struggled, but it was like fighting against a tidal wave, impossible, overwhelming. "Let me go," I screamed, thrashing against the invisible force. Lilian stepped closer, her empty eyes boring into mine. "You opened the door," she repeated. "Now you have to close it. But there's a price." "What price?" I gasped, tears streaming down my face. She smiled again, that same grotesque, hollow smile. "Someone has to stay." I realized, with a sinking feeling, what she meant. She wasn't here to haunt me. She was here to take my place. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, I can't. I have to protect my kids." "You have a choice," she said, her voice echoing in my mind. "You can stay, or they can." I felt my knees give out beneath me as the weight of her words sank in. I had brought this upon us. I had opened the door, and now I had to pay the price. I looked up at her, my vision blurred by tears. "Take me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just leave them alone." She nodded slowly, and I felt the grip on my wrists loosen. The room began to spin, and I could feel myself slipping away, falling into the darkness. As I lost consciousness, I heard her voice one last time. "Goodbye, sister." When I woke up, I was lying on the floor of the living room. The house was quiet, and the oppressive heaviness that had lingered for weeks was gone. I stumbled to my feet and ran upstairs, my heart racing. I burst into my children's room and found them fast asleep, safe and sound. It was over, or so I thought. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror, and that's when I saw her, Lilian, standing just behind me, her hollow eye staring back at me from the depths of the glass. She smiled, and I knew, in that moment, that I hadn't escaped. I had traded one prison for another, and now I was the one trapped in the darkness. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond Fear and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Here, you'll find more real stories filled with mystery, psychological horror, and the supernatural every week. Before you go, make sure to check out the 2 videos that just popped up in the end screen. I promise, they'll leave you with goosebumps. See you next time, if you dare.